You get paid on Friday. By Sunday night, you're wondering where half of it went. Not rent, not groceries, not bills, just gone. A coffee here, a quick buy there, a subscription you forgot you had, a thing you saw online that felt important for about 9 seconds. You're not being reckless, you're just living. But living like this has a cost that doesn't show up on any receipt, and it compounds quietly, the same way interest does, except in reverse. You're not building wealth, you're renting your own attention span. Honestly, I used to think the same way. I'd justify every small purchase because, it wasn't a car or a vacation, so how bad could it be? But then I started tracking it, not obsessively, just honestly. And the number was disgusting. Not because it was some wild amount, but because I couldn't even remember what I bought. It was like paying a tax to a store I didn't even know I was subscribed to. So I made a decision that felt extreme at the time, but turned out to be the most clarifying thing I've ever done. I stopped buying non-essentials for 12 months. Not because I was broke, because I wanted to see what happened if I didn't bleed money on autopilot. And here's the thing nobody tells you. The first shift isn't financial. It's psychological, and it's uncomfortable. Because when you stop spending on non-essentials, you realize how much of your identity was wrapped up in the act of buying. You were using purchases to feel productive, to feel like you were solving problems, to feel like you were moving forward. But you weren't. You were just moving money. Let me walk you through what actually happens month by month when you commit to 12 months of zero non-essential spending. Because this isn't a deprivation challenge, it's an identity rebuild. And by the end of it, you won't want to go back. Month 1 feels like a game. You're motivated, you're tracking every dollar, you're saying no to things you used to say yes to without thinking, and it feels powerful. You walk past a store, you scroll past an ad, you get a limited time offer email, and you just don't bite. You feel like you've unlocked some kind of cheat code. Your bank account stops hemorrhaging, you start seeing money sit there for the first time in years. It's not a huge amount yet, but it's visible, and visibility is addictive. But here's the trap: you think this is the hard part. It's not. Month 1 is easy because it's new. You're riding the high of the decision. You haven't hit the psychological wall yet. Month 2 is when the dopamine wears off, the excitement fades. You're not getting the little hits of novelty anymore. No packages arriving, no "I deserve this" purchases, no reward after a long day. And your brain starts to notice. It starts whispering things like, "This is boring. You're not even enjoying your money. What's the point of earning if you're not spending?" And that voice is dangerous because it sounds reasonable. It sounds like balance, but it's not. It's just your old wiring trying to pull you back into the loop. This is where most people quit. Not because they run out of money, because they run out of patience with themselves. They convince themselves that one purchase won't hurt, and maybe it won't, but it's not about the purchase, it's about the pattern. One purchase breaks the seal, and once the seal is broken, the floodgates open. So here's the chess move you need to make in month 2. Reframe the game. You're not depriving yourself, you're aging your wealth like cheese. Rushed cheese tastes like plastic. Aged cheese develops depth, complexity, flavor. Your money is the same. If you spend it now, it's flat. If you let it sit, if you let it compound, if you let it age without touching it, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes optionality. It becomes freedom. It becomes power. Month 3 is when clarity hits. And I mean real clarity. You start noticing things you didn't see before. You see how many purchases you were making just to fill time. You see how much stuff you already own that you forgot about. You see patterns in your spending that were invisible when you were inside them. And the most surprising thing? You realize you don't miss most of it. Not because you're suddenly a minimalist, but because you were never buying those things for the thing itself. You were buying the feeling, and the feeling never lasted. This is the month where the first real savings number shows up. If you were spending, say, $1,500 a month on non-essentials, by month 3, you've saved $4,500. That's not theory. That's rent. That's a used car. That's an emergency fund you didn't have 90 days ago. And seeing that number sitting there, untouched, does something to your brain. It shifts the reward center. You start getting dopamine from not spending, from watching the number grow, from knowing you're in control.
But month 3 also introduces a new problem: temptation disguised as logic. Someone's birthday is coming up. You need to buy a gift, right? Or your car needs an oil change, and while you're there, the mechanic mentions your tires are getting low. Not urgent, but soon. And you start asking yourself, does that count as essential? Where's the line? And if you're not careful, you'll start negotiating with yourself. You'll start creating exceptions, and exceptions are the holes in your cheese. Patch them or pay for them later. Month 6 is the most dangerous month. This is where the psychological wall shows up in full force. You're halfway through. You've saved a decent amount. You've proven you can do it. And now your brain says, okay, you've made your point. You've saved enough. You can relax now. And that voice is so convincing because it sounds wisdom. It sounds like balance, but it's not. It's just your old wiring trying to pull you back into the loop. Here's what happens if you break at month 6. You don't just lose the savings, you lose the identity shift. Because the whole point of the 12 months isn't the money, it's the rewiring. It's the proof to yourself that you can delay gratification, that you can build instead of consume, that you can think in years instead of days. If you quit at month 6, you're still the person who spends on impulse. You're just taking a break. But if you push through, you become someone else. Someone who doesn't need the hit. Someone who's playing a different game. The chess endgame is all about discipline. You've sacrificed pieces, you've held position, and now you're in the final stretch. The board is clearer, the moves are simpler, but you have to finish. Because if you don't, all those sacrifices were for nothing. You gave up the queen for no reason. You let the position collapse. Month 9 is where the identity lock happens. By now, not spending on non-essentials isn't a challenge anymore. It's just how you operate. You don't feel deprived, you feel efficient. You've built a system, you've patched the holes, you've aged your wealth, and when you look at your bank account, you see something you've never seen before. Margin. Room to breathe, room to make decisions without panic, room to say no to things that used to feel mandatory. And here's the weirdest part. You start looking at other people spending differently, not judgmentally, but with clarity. You see someone buying something impulsively, and you remember that used to be you. You see someone complaining they have no money, but they're holding a $7 coffee and wearing a brand new jacket. And you're not mad at them, you just see the system. You see the loop they're stuck in, and you're grateful you got out. Month 12 is the finish line, but it doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like a baseline, because by now the shift is permanent. You've saved somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000, depending on what your non-essential spending used to look like. But more importantly, you've rewired the relationship. You don't see purchases the same way. You don't get the same dopamine hit from buying. You get it from building, from watching the number grow, from knowing you're in control. And when the 12 months are over, you don't go back. Not because you can, because you don't want to. You've tasted what it's like to have margin, to have optionality, to have a cutting board under your money instead of letting it roll around loose. And once you've felt that, going back feels like stepping into a cage you used to think was normal. So here's what I'll say. If you're reading this and thinking, I could never do that, you're right. Not because you're weak, but because you're thinking about it like a challenge, like something you survive and then go back to normal. But that's not the move. The move is to stop thinking about it as deprivation and start thinking about it as surgery. You're cutting out the habits that are bleeding you dry. You're aging your wealth instead of rushing it. You're building a system instead of renting one. 12 months, no non-essentials. And by the end of it, you won't recognize your bank account. But more importantly, you won't recognize yourself. And that's the whole point.